When you study the home front strategies of the Second World War, you uncover an entire layer of practical, disciplined preparedness that most people today rarely talk about. And before we go any further, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the deep dive historical breakdowns we post here. Now, let's set the hook properly. What made the Second World War different from other conflicts wasn't just the battles overseas. It was that ordinary citizens had to think like strategists, anticipate danger, and turn everyday homes into practical centres of readiness. They didn't have modern sensors, smart locks or comms apps. They relied on structure, discipline and techniques that, if you strip them down to their core, still hold tremendous value today. When you look back at how people protected their homes, their communities, and their resources during the war, you start to see that their methods weren't outdated at all. They were fundamentals, and fundamentals don't expire. So let's get straight into the 7 tactics that worked then, still work now, and can be adapted by anyone interested in practical, historically rooted home preparedness. The first tactic is re-establishing perimeter awareness the way civilians did during blackout protocols. During the Second World War, coastal towns and major cities enforced strict blackout conditions to prevent enemy aircraft from identifying targets. What gets overlooked is how this trained civilians to pay attention to the edges of their environment. Today, you can apply this by establishing a nightly perimeter check that doesn't rely only on technology. Walk the property. Check gates, windows and blinds. Learn the natural shadows and light sources around your home so you immediately notice when something is off. In the Second World War, households were trained to see the difference between normal and abnormal lighting. You can apply the same principle by knowing what your environment is supposed to look and sound like at different hours. The second tactic is practicing resource discipline the way ration books force families to do. This isn't about scarcity for its own sake. It's about knowing what you have, how long it lasts, and where the weak points are. Wartime homes kept meticulous notes because they had to. Today, this level of discipline pays off in real emergencies. Right, so keep a simple ledger of your basic supplies: water, preserved food, batteries, first aid materials, and, update it weekly. That small habit gives you the same advantage wartime families had: control and predictability during uncertainty. A practical way to start is by doing a 1-week audit, documenting what you consume, what you waste, and what disappears faster than expected. Adjusting based on that knowledge is exactly what families did in the 1940s. The third tactic is learning layered communication, the way neighbourhood wardens coordinated alerts. During World War II, neighbourhoods relied on structured communication routes. If one person spotted danger, the information moved efficiently, not chaotically. So, today's equivalent is, building a small reliable network of neighbours or friends who can contact each other quickly during disruptions. It doesn't need to be dramatic, not at all. It can start with just agreeing on a simple protocol. If power goes out, who checks in with whom? You see, it worked in the 1940s because it was clear, prearranged and practiced. The modern version can be just as effective, honestly. The fourth tactic is adopting strategic concealment, not paranoia, just like the way families safeguarded valuables during air raid risks. During the war, folks hid important documents, heirlooms, and essential tools in places that were, well, difficult to destroy or loot. They weren't operating in fantasy, they were responding to real threats. So, translating that idea into modern times means, storing backups of your essential documents in fire-resistant containers, keeping secondary copies off-site, and placing those really irreplaceable items somewhere that's secure but still accessible. The method here isn't about secrecy, really. It's what we call structured redundancy. And that's something WWII Holmes understood pretty well, actually. The fifth tactic is all about reinforcing entry points, using the same sort of logic that civil defence manuals taught for blast protection. While obviously you aren't fortifying your home for bombing raids these days, the underlying principle still holds true. Strengthen the points where your home is most vulnerable. Wartime manuals emphasize simple, realistic steps: securing windows, maintaining doors, keeping tools handy for quick repairs. Today, that translates into checking the integrity of locks, replacing weak screws in strike plates with longer ones, maintaining outdoor lighting and, making sure your emergency tools are stored in a predictable central location. These aren't tactical fantasies. They're maintenance habits with proven historical roots. The sixth tactic is organizing your home so essential tools are within arm's reach, the same way households arranged air raid kits. Families kept first aid supplies, flashlights and basic tools in consistent locations so they could function in the dark and under stress. You can replicate this by, selecting one location for your emergency essentials and drilling yourself, literally practicing retrieving them quickly. Back in WWII, children were taught to find items without hesitation. Funny thing is, adults today often fail that test in their own homes. The discipline of knowing where everything is stored, honestly, can shave minutes off your response time in a real emergency. The seventh tactic is conducting calm, periodic readiness drills modelled on the civilian air raid exercises of the time. These weren't dramatic events, not at all. They were rehearsals designed to reduce confusion. So, applying this today might mean, practicing how your family handles a power outage, how you respond to a communication blackout, or even how you evacuate the home if necessary. The point isn't fear, it's familiarity. WWII civilians understood that when the unexpected hits, muscle memory outperforms theory every time. All 7 of these tactics come directly from the lived experience of households that didn't have the luxury of ignoring home preparedness. They weren't training for entertainment, they were refining habits that kept their communities resilient. If you adopt even 1 or 2 of these methods, you're stepping into a tradition of practical, historically grounded readiness that still matters. If you learned something new today, make sure you subscribe, share this video with fellow history enthusiasts, and keep the legacy of real-world knowledge alive.